Hope you have a love for beans, cause this month's character for Xenoblade Profiles is full of them. He is the great-grandson of Noah and Mio, brother of Niall, founder of House Vandham, and always ready for a fight. This is the story of Matthew. Designed by Matsatsuko Saito, and voiced by Junya Inoki and Rory Alexander, Matthew, or Mashu, is an original character for Xenoblade 3's DLC prequel, Future Redeemed. Matthew can be described as a straightforward but kind individual with a fierce personality with a strong fighting spirit, often rushing into battle without carefully thinking things through. For his physical appearance, he has slightly tanned skin, blue eyes, sporting long black hair styled into a ponytail with the sides cut notably shorter compared to the top of his head, and sports a sweeping curved bang towards the center of his head. He also has a scar above his left eye. Matthew's outfit consists of a dark, short-sleeved outer jacket with tribal-like markings, worn over an orange inner jacket. He wears dark pants with white markings on the side and has 2 earrings on his left ear. Matthew's class is a martial artist, a fist-fighting attacker class which specializes in assailing the enemy with repeated attacks. He wields the Ouroboros knuckles as his blade. Having learned from the ways of his grandfather Gondor, Matthew desires to live in a world of peace where no one has to take each other's lives. 15 years prior to the events of Future Redeemed, Matthew's parents were killed during an attack on the city by the villainous group Mobius, and from that point on, Matthew and his sister Niall were raised by their grandfather Gondor, who trained them on using the power of Ouroboros. During their time living in the city, Matthew and Niall would help out with gathering supplies. One day, Matthew and his sister would stumble upon the ruins of a second city settlement, when the Keves soldiers responsible for the destruction would show up, preparing to fight. Seeing the destruction and death of friends, this event would send Niall into a rage and kill the Keves soldiers, and would later get into a heated argument with Matthew about living in Ionios, and calling him out on how he had yet to make his world of peace a reality. Sometime later, the city would be attacked by Mobius, and to his horror, Matthew would witness that his grandfather had been stabbed by the council leading the attack, Council N. As Matthew desperately ran towards his grandfather, Gondor used the last of his energy to use his Ouroboros powers on Niall, who was possessed by Future Redeemed lead villain Alpha, causing an explosion of energy which resulted in the city's destruction and leaving Matthew injured and unconscious. Matthew would eventually be discovered by A, who Matthew assumed to be a citizen returning from a trip, who would treat his injuries and become something of a mentor to him. After he recovered, the two would set out looking for city survivors. The two would eventually come across a battlefield where they found Nicol, a Keves soldier, and Glimmer, an Agnian soldier, fighting in a battle to the death. Against A's advice, Matthew would break up the fight, and 2 consuls, Q and R, would appear, only for the consuls to be killed by A, who would then destroy the nearby flame clocks, which, combined with the fact that because Matthew used his Ouroboros powers in range of Nicol and Glimmer, would cause the 2 soldiers to become Ouroboros themselves. Knowing that the 2 wouldn't be accepted and killed by other colonies, Matthew would take them in. Glimmer, however, unable to accept the fact that she was no longer an Agnian soldier, would run away in search of a colony. The party would find Glimmer and past series protagonist Shulk being attacked by Consul W, and would team up with Shulk and Rex, another past protagonist, to defeat the Consul, where then afterwards, the duo would introduce themselves and their organization, the Liberators. The next day, Rex and Shulk would lead the group to Colony 9, the Liberators' base of operations, where Matthew would find a bracelet which belonged to his sister, that a Liberator search party had found at Ragul Lake, where Matthew quickly set out to when Niall, still being possessed by Alpha, would appear before the party, only then for the 2 sides to fight until the arrival of Council N, where Matthew would learn that N, much to his shock, was his great-grandfather. After the party's encounter with Alpha and N, Shulk and Rex would inform the party on how Ionios was created, and how Alpha deemed the existence of all people from the worlds of Bionis and Alrest as obsolete, and wanted to erase them while taking the people of the city to the Ark within Origin, for the purpose of taking them to a new world. When immediately following the discussion, A would advise Matthew to hear out N's side of the story before passing judgment. It should be noted that while all these events were happening, Matthew and the rest of the party would help with various tasks around Colony 9, with Matthew taking a prominent role in the side quest Breaking Ground, which would showcase Matthew's growth as a leader by rallying both Liberators and City Survivors to work together to repair armories and uniting the two groups as one before the party would prepare themselves for one last confrontation with Alpha. After preparations were finished, the party would make their way to Prison Island, which was located underneath Origin, where the party was once again confronted by Council N, who intended to prevent them from reaching Alpha. For Matthew, was the final piece Alpha required. As Matthew clashed with N during the fight, a memory from within Origin was shown, allowing the party to witness the true events that led to the city's destruction, where N claimed that through his sacrifice, Gondor consented to his actions. While Matthew refutes this, saying that his grandfather would never support slaughtering the city, before punching N, who didn't retaliate and admit defeat, for he knew Matthew to be right. Once inside Origin, the party found themselves in a memory space that showed Earth before Klaus's misuse of the conduit, and find Niall, who tries to convince her brother to Alpha's plan of living in a world like the one shown, oblivious to the widespread strife in the world brought up by the reports of a nearby radio. It would only be with the assistance of A that Matthew would get Niall to listen to reason, telling her that she would be no different from Mobius if she continued to view the lives of Kevis and Agnes as things, and went along with Alpha's plans. But before Niall could join her brother, Alpha would regain control of her and try to convince the party of heroes to see things his way, only for them to refuse and engage in battle. After a while, Alpha would try to pull Matthew's soul into the Ark, but Matthew would resist before N intervened in the battle, forcing Alpha to unleash his true form. N and Matthew would agree to a temporary truce, which, in a final effort to defeat Alpha, N would grant Matthew the powers of his Sword of the End, and instruct Matthew to combine it with his Ouroboros knuckles. This would grant the party the true power of Ouroboros, which would result in Alpha's defeat. After the battle, the party would have one more face-off with N stating, as Mobius, he would continue to uphold the Endless Now, to which Matthew would respond that the city would continue to fight against them. When N questions whether the party could actually take down Mobius in their lifetime, Matthew reassured him that if they couldn't, their descendants would continue where they left off, and even suspects that one day, N himself might even be the one to defeat Mobius someday, before the parties went their separate ways. Sometime later during the city's reconstruction, Matthew would depart on a journey around the world by himself, with the goal of rebuilding the world and finding more city survivors, leaving the city in the care of his sister and friends, but not before having one more farewell with Niall, promising her he would return someday. A statue of Matthew would later be built in his honor in Memorial Hall within the city, with it stating, "In memory of the founder of House Vandham and the city's restorer and liberator. The original incarnation of the city was once laid to ruin by Mobius N's hand. The founder realized fully the power of Ouroboros, heretofore limited, and fought against N, ousting him. Once victorious, he gathered the old city's people, scattered to the winds, and re-established the city. With the city restored, he left its government in the hands of the founder Doyle, and departed on a lonely expedition. No records exist of his fate thereafter. Heirs of Vandam's lineage only returned to the new city several centuries later. Oral tradition has it that the founder was master of the classic art of fistfighting, and the scions of House Vandam carry on the custom to this day. All descendants of House Vandam wear an eye patch adorned with the house's pattern when adventuring outside the city. The emblem depicts the Ouroboros knuckles. It wouldn't be until 1,000 years after the events of Future Redeemed that Mobius would be defeated and the worlds of Bionis and Ulrus successfully merge into one, where it is implied that Matthew would be reborn into this new world, which hopefully lives up to his dreams. Matthew's fist-fighting aptitude and design are similar to Fei Feng Wang, the main protagonist of Xenogears. His encounter with Nickel and Glimmer mirrors Guernica, one of his descendants, and his encounter with Noah and Mio in the main game. And finally, Matthew is the first Van character to be a protagonist of a Xeno game, with all the others being support characters. And that is the story of Matthew. What did you think of his character and inclusion in the series? Let me know in the comments section. Stay full of beans, and I'll see you in the next one.
I've got just a follow-up. I'll smash your face in.